All right, so let's work on question number 2. First of all, what does it mean right here when it says find and then it has TS with nothing over the top? What are they asking me to find? The length, the distance, yes. So they want me to find the length of the distance, and they want me to find the midpoint of TS. And then they give me the ordered pairs for T and S. So I'm going to let T be my X1, Y1, and I'm going to let S be my X2, Y2. So let's find the length or the distance first. So I would have TS equals, to do length or distance, this is where you need the big, long square root equation. When you look at the top of your test tomorrow, it'll have D equals for distance equals. Yes, yes. And then we do X2 minus X1, close our parentheses and square it, plus Y2 minus Y1, close the parentheses and square it. And then we can substitute in my X2 is -5, so I'm going to put -5 in the place of X2, minus X1, which is 1. Close my parentheses and square it. Plus Y2, which is 16, minus, and then we have -4, close my parentheses and square it. We're going to simplify each of the fractions by itself before we do any squaring and before we put the whole big thing with the radical into the calculator. -5 minus 1 is -6, so I have -6 squared, plus, and I have to be careful right here. I saw several different things happen as I was scoring the skills checks. We remembered there was something special about when you minus a negative. Yep. And it doesn't turn into addition just there. It's not that I'm minusing -4. They both turn positive. When I have two minuses, they both turn to pluses. And then 16 plus 4 then would be 20. Close my parentheses and square it. One of the other things that I noticed happen a lot on the skills check was we got tired of writing down the square root sign, and so then we forgot to put it with the square root sign into our calculators, which means we got the right number that should be under the radical, but we didn't get the right answer for the problem because we forgot to do the square rooting part. When you pop this into your calculator, you get about, see, it comes out to be 436 underneath the radical if you do that part, which is about 20.881 in its decimal form. I do not have to see this piece if you don't want to show me that one. You can go from here right to here, and that is perfectly fine. Was that what your question was?
Yeah, but also, doesn't it say round to the nearest 10th?
Round to the nearest tenth. So yeah, if you said 20.9, absolutely. If you give me more decimal places than it's asking for, that's perfectly fine. Just don't ever give me less. So if it asks you to round and it doesn't say to the nearest whole number, you want to make sure you're giving me decimals there. If you're not sure how many decimal places I'm asking for, raise your hand and ask. A tenth means 1 decimal place. The way I remember when they tell me things like this, like tenths, hundredths, thousandths, it's however many zeros that number has. How many zeros are in 10? 1. So I want 1 decimal places. Hundredths. How many zeros are in 100? 2. So hundredths, I would want 2 decimal places. But again, if you don't remember when you're on the test, raise your hand and ask. I'll happily tell you how many decimal places I'm wanting. All right, we also need to find the midpoint To find the midpoint, you add the x's together, so x1 plus x2, cut in half. Y1 plus y2, cut in half. On the test, you will get this formula, but it won't say the word midpoint over here. It'll just have a big capital letter M. So we're going to add those two x's together. So I'm going to add 1 and -5. Cut that in half. Then we do the same thing with the y's. We're going to do -4 plus 16. Cut it in half. 1 plus -5, that's -4. So I have -4 over 2. -4 plus 16 is 12. So I have 12 cut in half, or 12 over 2. So I end up with a midpoint of -2, 6. What other problems from the review would you guys like to see me work through? Number 3? Absolutely. We can do number 3. The midpoint of CD is -3,9. I'm going to sketch that picture real quick so that I can look at this. So C is one of my endpoints. D is another one of my midpoints. Or sorry, endpoints. It says the midpoint right here is -3,9. If the coordinates of point D are -13,4, add that to my picture. What is the coordinate of point C? We don't know. We need to find that. So this is what we are looking for. So we had a question just like this one on the skills check. This was the very last question. What I saw a lot of students doing, and don't write this part down, just watch this part. What I saw a lot of students doing is they do -3 plus -13 cut in half, and 9 plus 4 cut in half. And they got an ordered pair. What they found was the midpoint of this. And that's not what we're looking for. We don't want the midpoint from the red point over to D. We're looking for an end point. So to do that, I need my midpoint formula so that I can set everything up. Midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. My midpoint goes in the place of where it says midpoint. So this is where I put -3,9. I can put my end point, -13,4, in for either my x1, y1 or my x2, y2. I'm going to go with x1, y1. So I would have -13 plus x2 over 2, and 4 plus y2 over 2. And now I set up two equations, one to find the x, and the other one to find the y. So to find x, I need the x part of the midpoint, -3. And then notice there's an equal sign after that. And then I need my x fraction, -13 plus x2 over 2. See if I can move this up just a little bit. And then we're going to go and find y. So to find y, Same type of thing, except now I want the y part of my midpoint, 9. And then I need this equal sign right here. And then I want my y fraction, 4 plus y2 over 2. And then we solve each one of these fractions. And the first thing we have to do to solve them is to get rid of that denominator. Does anybody remember how we get rid of denominators? Yes. Multiply. What number are we going to multiply this time? 2. Why by 2? Because that's what the denominator is. Yes. Whenever I want to get rid of a fraction, I always multiply by whatever number is on the denominator. And if you do it to one side, got to do it to the other side. So we multiply both sides by 2. Be careful here. I saw a lot of people have a lot of good things set up and they made a mistake right here. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. If you have time, it's always a good idea to use your calculator to double check your mental math, since you've got one available to you here. Then we're going to add 13 to both sides. What is negative 6 plus 13? 7. So 7 is my x2. That means right now for my point C, 7 goes in the x spot. And then we're going to come over and we're going to find our y. We're going to follow the same process. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of this denominator by multiplying by 2. And if you do it to one side, we got to do the exact same thing to the other side. The 2 in my denominator and the 2 out here cancel each other out. So my fraction is no more. And I have 18 equals 4 plus y2. Minus 4 on both sides. And what is 18 minus 4? 14. So 14 is my y2. That means that is the y part of my ordered pair for point C. Nicely done. Yes. Yes, you may. What other problems would you guys like to see?
I want to tell you, I have 2 questions about this problem.
About this problem that we just did?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So like for a question like this, even though we're trying to find the coordinate of a point, why first are we trying to like put in like m equals? It seems like we're trying to find the midpoint instead of an endpoint.
No, we have the midpoint. It tells me right here what my midpoint is.
Well,
Because it tells me what the midpoint is, that's why I know I have to use the midpoint formula. Because it gave me an ordered pair for the midpoint. When it says find the midpoint, that's when I put numbers in for x1, x2, y1, y2. Yes. Number 15? Absolutely.
also, with another 3, mine was a little different now. I put in like negative 18,
Totally fine. It doesn't matter whether you put it in for x1 or x2, y1 or y2. You just have to put it in for one of those. Only endpoints can be x1, x2, y1, y2.
Okay, and lastly, so when you're trying to like find the actual midpoint, you would just put like m equals s1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then like if you're trying to find the point, you put in like the midpoint you're given, and the formula.
Yes.
Okay.
When you've got a given midpoint, that's when we have to do it like this.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the final point.
Good question. Yes, to find an endpoint. All right, number 15, sketch the following. Point O is the midpoint of DG. All right, so let's start getting that picture drawn. Here's my segment. Here's D. Here's G. It says O is the midpoint, so right around here is my point O. And then it says point R is the midpoint of DO. So now I'm just looking at this, and I want the midpoint of that. So that would be about here-ish. Since R is the midpoint of DO, that means that DR and RO are congruent. DO is being cut in half by point R. Since O is the midpoint of DG, that means that these two segments are also the same size. DO and OG are the same size. And now they give me some more information to mark my picture up with. It says OG is 4 times x minus 5. So right here, 4 times x minus 5. DR is x plus 2. So from D over to R, I forgot to stop at R, right here is x plus 2. And we want to somehow use this information to find the length of the whole big long line segment. Well, the very first thing that I see that I can do is I can put something down for this size. What could I put down for RO? What's the same size as RO? X plus 2. So I can write that down, x plus 2. So DO is equal to 2 times DR. To get the length of DR, to get the length of DO, I'm getting confused with my letters here. If I'm looking at just this, I have two segments that are both size x plus 2. What happens when I put those together? What happens when I combine those? What would I get? When I combine those two small segments, x plus 2 and x plus 2 together, we get DO, but what do we get as our expression? What happens with my x's? 2x plus 4, yes. 2x plus 4. DO is equal to 2, yes. Which one? 4 and 5. I can go back to those. I did not do them while you were gone. We jumped right to this one. We're distributing. So DO is 2x plus 4. Both ways that I can get at that. We said that DO was the same size as OG. Those are congruent because O is the midpoint. So what does that mean about these two segments? About their lengths? They're equal. So I'm going to set those equal to each other. Segment DO is congruent to segment OG. So the length of segment DO is equal to the length of segment OG. DO is 2x plus 4. OG is 4 times x plus 5. And now I have something that I can use to solve for x. I'm going to take this 4 and distribute it here. So I would have 2x plus 4 equals 4x. Oh, that should be a minus, right? It's 4x minus 5. My apologies. That should be a minus right there. So 4x minus 20. Then we're going to solve this for x now, so I need to get my x's to the same side. I'm going to minus 2x from both sides. 4 equals 2x minus 20. Then I add 20 to both sides to make this minus 20 cancel. So I get 24 equals 2x. And then I divide both sides by 2, which means x is how big? X is 12. But they didn't ask me to find x. What did they ask me to find? They asked me to find the length of DG from here all the way over to here. Well, DG is the same size as 2 segments that are as big as DO. Because DO, this segment right here, is the same size as OG. So 2 of these gives me that whole line segment. And earlier we found out that DO is 2x plus 4. So now I can substitute in the place of x. So I have 2 times 2 times my x, which is 12, plus 4. We do the inside of our parentheses first, right here. What is 2 times 12? 24 plus 8. +24 plus 8? I said plus 8. 24 plus 4. I'm so sorry. You were right. I asked the wrong question. Because I'm trying to do 2 times 12, which is 24, plus 4. 28. And I apologize that I misspoke. 2 times 28 would be what? 56. So DG has a length of 56. Did you want me to go back and do 4 and 5? Okay, we're going to go do 4 and 5 next. So back towards the front of the packet on the front page. 4 is nice and quick. It's a multiple choice question. So not a lot of steps. What geometric shape is modeled by a window? A plane. It is a flat surface, so that would be a plane. And then number 5. We had a problem like number 5 on the skills check. This was like problem number 2 on your skills check, almost exactly. We're going to graph segment JH. We're going to find the length of the segment. We're going to find the midpoint of the segment. And then we will label the midpoint as M on the graph. Whenever you graph line segments, every single piece has to be labeled if it has a label. J is -11, 8. So -11 means left 11 and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So right here is my point J. H is 9, -13. 9 is positive, so I go right 9 and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's my point H. And I'm going to connect those two with my line segment. Notice I did not take that segment past these ends. It would be wrong if I made it do this. That is not correct. It would be even more wrong if I put an arrow on the end of it, because it does not keep going. It stops at my endpoints. It should stop here, and it should stop there. All right, so let's find the length. Length is the same thing as what? I'm looking for a D word. Distance. We want to find the length from J to H. So this is where I need that big, long square root formula. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Don't get tired of writing down the big long square root sign. I know it's tiresome to write it down all the time, but if you don't write down that big long square root sign, you will not remember to type it in your calculator, and you will not get the right answer. All right, x2. Well, x2 is 9, because I'm going to have this be my x2, y2. So x2 is 9. 9 minus x1 is negative 11. So 9 minus, and then I have a negative squared. Plus, now I do the same thing with my y's. y2 is negative 13 minus y1, which is 8. Close the parentheses and remember to square it. Be careful here. How many of these turn into plus signs? 2 of them. If you only have one minus sign, it stays a minus. But if you have 2 minus signs, they both turn into pluses. What is 9 plus 11? 20. So I have 20 squared plus, and now I have to be careful here, negative 13 minus 8 is negative 21. When I put this in my calculator, I have to use parentheses, because otherwise, if you don't have parentheses around that negative number, your calculator is going to tell you it's a negative answer, and it is not. You do not get a negative answer. Hello. New student. Awesome. Let me see. All right. I am going to have you in desk number 23 right here, and I'll get you caught up here in just a moment. Once I get it to this point right here, I can grab my yellow calculator and I can type that in. When I hit enter on my calculator screen, it might still give me something that has a radical, but I don't need to see that radical answer. This one actually came out to be a perfectly whole number. When I put in my radical into my calculator, I got 29. That doesn't happen very often, that my lengths or my distances come out to be whole numbers when I've got x's and y's. But sometimes they do, and that's okay. It doesn't mean we did anything wrong. And then we're going to find our midpoint. Midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. We're supposed to call that midpoint M, so I'm going to replace the word midpoint with M, just like you'll see it on your formula sheet. x1 was negative 11 plus x2, which is 9, over 2. And then the fraction for my y's, we have y1, which is 8, plus y2, which is negative 13, over 2. What is negative 11 plus 9? Negative 2. So I have negative 2 over 2. Negative 8 plus negative 13. 8 plus negative 13 is negative 5. And now we're going to change these. We're going to simplify them. Negative 2 over 2 comes out to be the whole number of negative 1. But negative 5 over 2 does not come out to be a whole number. I get negative 2.5. So that is my midpoint. Then I'm going to come over to this graph. Negative 1 goes to the left 1, and then down 1, 2, and halfway down to 3. So in between negative 2 and negative 3. Putting that point there is important, but you also have to label it. Make sure you take the time to label that point. That will count for points when you're on the test. What other problems would you guys like to see? I've got 4 minutes left. That's enough time for one more problem. Yes. Number 8, absolutely. Oh, skipping right around it. Given point Y is between points X and Z. I'm going to stop right there and draw my picture. My endpoints are called X and Z. Point Y is between them. Did it say that Y is the midpoint? No, it just says it's between. So I'm not going to put it in the middle. I'm going to put it over here somewhere. I do not mark these things as congruent because they're not. XY is 4A plus 17. So from X over to Y, it's 4A plus 17. XZ is 10A minus 3. So from X all the way over to Z, 10A minus 3. And YZ is 22. I'm going to have to use my segment addition postulate here. The two smaller segments that are being put together are XY and YZ. And when I combine those two smaller segments together, it gives me the big segment XZ. XY, I'm going to replace with the expression 4A plus 17. I'm going to bring down my plus sign. And YZ, I'm going to replace with 22. Equals, in the place of XZ, I put 10A minus 3. So the first thing I need to do is I need to combine these two like terms together. So I have 4A plus 39 equals 10A minus 3. Now I get my A's to the same side. And so I have 39 is equal to 6A minus 3. We add 3 to both sides. So I have 42 is equal to 6A. Divide both sides by 6, and that means A is 7. They wanted me to find XZ. From X to Z is 10A minus 3. So we do 10 times 7 minus 3. So 70 minus 3 is 67. All right.